My adrenaline rises now. Ghost, I owe you one.
I was waiting for a chance to show off.
You can do it.
Grenade blitz! Go us!
Hello everyone, it's Saltyman here again. Okay, so today we are going to be going over a quick guide on dealing damage in Xenoblade Chronicles X, because, you know, this is one of the more complicated things to figure out at the start of the game. Now this is more of a basics guide, so you can see I do have my trusty assault rifle equipped. I actually still use this weapon, but also have equipped some of the arts you will get earlier in the game, so we can show how exactly these work. Now, two of the ones you'll get quite early are Flame Grenade and Assault Hammer. So, Assault Hammer is more straightforward. You can see it just has this hit scaling. So, mine's leveled up, so it's 600%. But this hit scaling basically works with your melee attack or your ranged attack. And then you can see this one secondary cooldown bonus. You can just use it again. But then Flame Grenade, this is where it starts getting a lot more complicated. So you have hit scaling, 700%. Then special effects deals 150% more damage to enemies inflicted with topple. And then secondary cooldown bonus, damage 250%. So you might be thinking it's like times 1.5 and then times 2.5, so he'll be doing like 5 times more damage if you hit someone when they're toppled and you have secondary cooldown, but that is not always the case. So I'll try to explain how some of these calculations work. So again, this hit scaling, that works directly with your melee or ranged attack, but then some of these other ones like the special effects and secondary cooldown bonus, those are added based on your base damage. So these do not actually multiply with each other. So this is quite important because this is how most effects work in this game, and this also means that your base damage has a much larger effect than additional damage effects. So I'll try to explain what I mean. Okay, so you can see I have 1971 ranged attack. So this hit scaling scales directly with that, and then any additional effects will scale with that amount. So for the arts, some of these, the additional effects can add quite a bit of damage, or they might look like it, but because they're all adding to the base damage, that's not going to be a lot if you don't have base damage to begin with. So you will eventually start getting skills and some arts that also increase damage, but this is always the same. It's always your base damage. So you can see this skill actually increases your base ranged attack. So this will also affect any other effects you have. So like that special effect on the arts card and the secondary cooldown bonus, that will actually be directly affected by this skill. Then you have some other ones like this, boost damage to taunted enemies by 100%. So this is actually 100% of your base damage. This does not multiply with any other extra effects. Same as these ones, most are the same. Same as this boost elemental damage, but there's a few odd cases, like there's one I know is specific, because it's quite an infamous skill. It's called Core Crusher, if I can find it. Okay, this one, you can see it says, negates appendage damage from your ether attacks, but boosts primary damage by 150%. So this actually multiplies your base damage by 150%. So this also multiplies any additional effects. So on a skill like Flame Grenade, this will have a huge effect, although Flame Grenade actually is thermal, but I'm just using that as an example. So a lot of these ones it says boost damage, these are all just additional. So your base damage does have a huge effect. Now you can see some of these have interesting special effects, like this one is a ranged art. You won't get the skill until later, but you can see it deals 150% more damage when triggering a melee combo. So that means if you use a melee art or any art from a melee weapon and then use this next, that's technically a melee combo. If you use a ranged art first, then another art, that's a ranged combo. So a lot of your buffs and auras will also do the same thing. They'll be boost. So this one actually boosts your ranged attack. So this also boosts any additional effects you have. Some of them will just boost elemental damage or specific things. Critical damage actually also works with everything, so pretty interesting. So anything that actually directly increases your ranged or melee damage is going to have a huge effect, because most of the skills you get early on, they do have these additional effects. So the higher your base damage, the higher your damage will be. So say you have someone toppled and you let the flame grenade get to secondary cooldown, it's going to do a ton more damage if you have a bit more base damage as opposed to something that boosts elemental damage by say 25%. Now, this is not as important at the start, but you can see Assault Hammer attribute is physical and the other assault rifle ones are thermal. So enemies do have different attribute resistances, but at the start of the game they're more base. So you won't have to worry about resistances too much at the start, and you do not get too many choices, but once you start changing your weapon, you'll get some that actually use your weapon attribute. So each weapon has different attributes. So obviously different attributes are more effective against different enemies. Also, certain skills or effect only affect certain attributes. So if you want to optimize your damage, it can be good to optimize one damage type and one weapon type. Although you will get some situations like Assault Hammer is on the assault rifle, but it's a melee skill, or a melee art, sorry. So this actually scales with your melee damage and melee accuracy. So if you have massive range damage, Assault Hammer is not going to do too much. But early in the game you should have a fair amount of both. So Assault Hammer actually still does quite a bit of damage thanks to the hit scaling. So I will show off what I mean. Oh, also some arts do not have any special effects, so that can be good and bad. You can see this one 500% hit scaling, but then 3 hits. So this actually has pretty good total hit scaling, and because it has no special effects, this means that it scales a lot better with extra effects, like all your skills or augments, anything like that, since there's nothing that's adding to it. So yeah, these multipliers or additives are something you really want to pay attention to if you want to optimize your damage. But I will show off just what kind of effect this has. We'll just do a normal flame grenade.
Scattered like leaves.
We got him. Let's move. They're off guard.
Oh, you might just blow up in one assault hammer. Oh, okay, yeah, I have no melee attack. Okay, you can see, no, it actually did 160,000. So you can also see it had kind of that bubble around it. So that means that the special effect on the attack was activated. So these arts can have a variety of special effect conditions. So this quick cannon, same thing. You can see I used the melee art and then I used the quick cannon. So that's actually pretty handy because the assault rifle already has a melee art, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But buffs and debuffs actually count as melee or ranged skills. So you don't necessarily have to be at point blank range to activate a melee combo, if that makes sense. Now these secondary cooldown bonuses, these only work with the weapon you're holding. So you can see I have the assault rifle. Oh, this is... I'll have to find some higher level enemies to show this, sorry. But yeah, basically the arts for the weapon you have equipped will start cooling down again if you don't use them. And when that ring becomes fully complete, that means it's on secondary cooldown. So I did show before the assault hammer. If you let it cool down twice, you can use it twice in a row. So you can see all of them have this green ring going around. So assault hammer, if I let it go, I can actually use it twice in a row. Flame grenade, if I use it, it will do 250% more damage. But if I use assault hammer and then secondary flame grenade, you can see now it does 400,000 damage. Now, you might have already changed your weapons, but a lot of weapons earlier in the game are actually weak to thermal damage, and the assault hammer is actually a great weapon, so even if you're changing your classes around, you can actually keep certain weapons. Also, I will talk about more of this stuff later, but you can see some of these classes change your weapons around. But say you switch into commando class, you can actually go back to drifter after, or you can change your classes around so you actually can mix your weapons up a bit earlier in the game. You don't necessarily have to use the exact ones in your class line. Although if you want to level everything up first, that's probably the best idea, but you don't necessarily need to switch off the assault rifle and knife right away. They actually have a lot of really good arts on them. Yeah, the knife doesn't do much damage though. So you can see this one, it's from the side, it boosts damage. So when you're actually looking at an enemy, it will say where you're facing, but from the side should be fairly obvious, but sometimes it can be hard to see, actually. So we will go over all the arts more in depth later, but I just wanted to talk about how all these things work together and how your actual damage calculations work. Another thing that has a big effect, obviously, is attribute resistances. So most pheroids or more animal indigens, they're weak to thermal. But later you will find enemies resistant to certain things, or you will also start getting debuffs that reduce resistances, or enemies that use buffs that increase resistances. So there can be things in the middle of fights that affect the amount of damage you do. There's specific arts that actually bypass resistances, so they'll always do the same damage, but you will want to be aware of that. Now defense actually has very little effect in this game, but there is a buff called barrier, which directly reduces damage by like 50% I think, or even more. So some enemies actually have that. So there can be some buffs or things they use in the middle of fights that can either cause your damage to reduce or completely stop working. Like some enemies say will have 50% to a resistance to an element, but then during the fight they might use a buff that reduces or increases it another 50. Sorry. And then suddenly they're immune. Some enemies also have decoy, which basically blocks a set amount of hits. So I will talk more about that skill when I go into buffs and more defensive skills. But certain enemies can use this. So basically what that means is you have to hit them a certain amount of times. So single hits arts are not very good in this situation. But you can actually use your standard attacks to whittle this away. And yeah, I've said this before, but your standard attacks do not do much damage. Earlier in the game though, with your whole squad, they do a fair amount, like when you don't have arts yet. Or when everything's not leveled up, so. Your arts definitely are your main source of doing damage. Also, before I forget, there is different targeting for arts. So, a lot of them will be single enemy. So that's pretty straightforward. These ones are single hit too. But then Grenade Blitz is kind of a funky skill. It says target enemies ahead. So this one's a bit unique in that it fires 3 shots and it will track out random enemies. But if there's 3 enemies in front, it will only hit those. But most that are enemy vicinity, are more area of effect attacks. Actually, I can show one off quick. Also, some range skills are actually area of effect. I know the assault rifle has one. Let's go with this. So yeah, you're going to want to be aware of how skills actually, or how arts actually target enemies. So you can see Burning Slash. This one says enemies ahead. So this has like a huge slash in front of you. Some of them are different. This one, nearby enemies, so this hits all around you. So these can have a few different things. Also, just because it says enemy ahead, it can be completely different. Like, they all have different hitboxes, and some of them actually have some disable effects that it doesn't say. Like, this one actually inflicts thermal resist down, but this one hits everywhere. You can have certain attack skills that can knock enemies down or cause them to flinch, things like that. So there can be a few hidden effects actually, but shouldn't have to worry too much about those on your skills earlier in the game. Those you more worry about later, and we will discuss those in detail. So yeah, you can see this just like a big fire tornado in front of me, so that kind of hits everyone in front of you. So arts that have debuffs too, like this one obviously inflicts thermal resist down. Since that hits in an area, that will inflict the debuff to everyone that it hits. So any arts that inflict debuffs in a large area can be extremely handy. Actually, I do have one good example of a weapon that has many different targeting properties. Okay, I'll show you the ultimate weapon. So you can see Arcane Horn is a single enemy, but this actually launches you forward, so attacks can have completely different properties. This is still a single enemy, but it hits in front. This one hits all around you, but it also causes you to fly in the air. And this one does stun in an area of effect, so that one's extremely handy. This hits everyone all in front of you. So yeah, you can see this one shoots like a wind tornado in front of me. So they have different area of effects as well. And this one actually throws it like a boomerang, and it hits everyone in front of you. Oh, also, before I forget, since you're probably using the assault rifle early, probably still have it equipped. Oh, here we go. You will get a few skills with either Blaze or Shock damage. So Blaze is also directly affected by your base damage. So it's the damage that the hit that causes Blaze dealt. Sorry, that was terribly worded. So, like, basically when it causes Blaze, it calculates it based off that hit. So any really strong single hit move will do a lot more Blaze damage, but that again is based off your actual base damage. Same as Shock. So I just wanted to explain how those skills work, because you probably will be getting Blaze quite a bit on Flame Grenade or when you're using the Assault Rifle, and it actually can do a fair amount of damage if you do a lot of damage with Flame Grenade. But if you do optimize your damage early and level them up, honestly, Assault Rifle and Flame Grenade kill like everything. Also, I will talk more about skills later, but this is a kind of funky case. you can see this one grants Supercharge. So Supercharge increases damage by 100%, but this is another additive. So this only affects the base damage, and it only affects a single hit. So this is really powerful on Flame Grenade when you already have an enemy toppled, but if you're using it on something like where Takedown Shot, this hits 6 times, so this will actually only affect the very first hit of this, so it will have very little effect on Takedown Shot. So yeah, I just wanted to clear up exactly how these damage calculations work. The last thing, you probably won't worry about it yet, but Potential only affects the art or the damage done by TP attacks. So those are any arts that use tension points. Those are not actually affected by your total ranged attack or your total melee attack. It's only your potential and your base weapon damage. So earlier in the game you'll probably have mostly non-TP arts, and you will want to focus on those. So I would recommend just getting high ranged attack or melee attack. But later in the game you may want to focus more on potential, but you probably do not want to split these. Same as melee attack and ranged attack, you usually do not want to split them. At the very start of the game, since Flame Grenade and Assault Hammer are both very strong skills and your main skills, it can be a good idea. But later you're definitely going to want to focus on one or the other to get the most effect, because like I said before, this base effect really affects everything, and this also affects every skill and additional effect and augment you have. So yeah, hopefully this clears up the damage calculation for everyone. I will try to leave some basic calculations and explanations in the description as well, but we'll go over all the buffs and debuffs and everything like that more in the future. I just wanted to go over the basic damage calculations and how to get the most out of your damage, because I know I was not doing much at the start. I was doing everything wrong, so hopefully this helps anyone having trouble. Thanks again. I'll see you guys soon.